Marcos Jr. We welcome Filipina tennis star Alex Eala to Malacañang for a coming reception.
The two items placed on the table inside the ceremonial hall of Malacañang Palace on the evening of Monday, July 13, were not the kind of things you would expect to see in the hands of the President of the Philippines. They were two baseball caps and a pair of tennis balls, each freshly signed by 21-year-old tennis star Alex Eala, who stood just across from him. Only moments earlier, President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. had presented Alex Eala with the Presidential Citation, recognizing her as the first Filipina to achieve historic success on the international professional tennis circuit. That remarkable accomplishment was the reason the Grand Hall was filled with distinguished guests, why the state television cameras were broadcasting the ceremony live, and why her parents were proudly seated in the front row witnessing the occasion. Then came an unexpected yet unforgettable moment as the president accepted Alex Eala's autograph, transforming a formal state ceremony into a heartfelt exchange that perfectly reflected the significance of the day. Keep that image in your mind throughout this story, not the medal, not the official citation, but the signed cap, because what unfolded inside Malacañang Palace this week was about much more than a government honor. It was the story of an entire nation figuring out how to celebrate one of its own after she accomplished something no Filipino had ever achieved before, creating a new tradition as history was being made. Just 2 weeks earlier, Alex Eala had stepped onto the iconic grass courts of the All England club as the tournament's 29th seed, beginning a remarkable journey that would soon captivate the entire nation.
First Filipino woman to attain unprecedented success on the international professional tennis circuit.
That number may seem modest by global tennis standards, but in the Philippines, it represents a historic milestone. On that day, Alex Eala became the first Filipina ever to be seeded at a Grand Slam tournament, a landmark achievement highlighted in Olympicscom's Wimbledon 2026 preview. By the end of the fortnight, she had advanced to the round of 16, becoming the first Filipino, male or female, to reach the fourth round of a major championship, a feat confirmed by both GMA News and the Philippine Daily Inquirer during their coverage of Monday's ceremony. Although her remarkable run ended in the round of 16, she still received the Presidential Citation, and that is the detail that gives this story its true significance, because it completely changes the meaning behind the honor. There is an easy way to tell this story, but it misses the bigger picture. The simple version goes like this. A young Filipina wins big on the world stage, the president recognizes her achievements, and the entire country celebrates. While that version is true, it barely scratches the surface. A presidential citation is not a trophy or a championship prize. It is an official recognition from the Philippine government, a formal declaration reserved for individuals whose accomplishments become part of the nation's history. It represents the state's decision to permanently recognize a citizen as someone who has elevated the country's identity in the eyes of the world. When President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. read the citation during Monday evening's ceremony, the wording carried tremendous weight. As reported by the Philippine Daily Inquirer, he recognized Alex Eala as the first Filipina to achieve unprecedented success on the international professional tennis circuit. He also praised her for inspiring a new generation of Filipino athletes to pursue excellence through hard work, discipline, and unwavering dedication, while bringing pride, honor, and joy to the Filipino people. Those words describe far more than victories on a tennis court. They define the role of a national symbol. Somewhere between her unforgettable third-round triumph and her round of 16 defeat, the Philippine government determined that Alex Eala had become more than an athlete. She had become someone whose achievements would help define the country's future, whether she expected that responsibility or not. That makes the Presidential Citation far more meaningful than any trophy she has lifted so far. To understand why the government moved so quickly, you have to look beyond the ceremony and examine the remarkable journey that led to it. Start with the rankings. According to the official WTA rankings, Alex Eala now sits at world number 28 in singles, the highest ranking of her career and the best ever achieved by a Filipina in Women's Tennis Association history. She also became the first player from the Philippines to break into the world's top 30. Just 3 months earlier, that milestone still seemed distant. her rise was anything but gradual. Throughout May, June, and early July, her ranking climbed at an astonishing pace, with GMA News documenting the steady surge week after week. That dramatic ascent earned her a seeded position at Wimbledon, placing her among the tournament's elite competitors for the very first time. Then came the match that transformed everything. On July 4, Alex Eala stepped onto one of Wimbledon's biggest stages to face defending champion Iga Swiatek in the third round. Swiatek entered the tournament ranked world number 3 and had suffered only one Wimbledon defeat over the previous 2 years. The opening set developed into an unforgettable battle lasting nearly 90 minutes before ending in a dramatic tiebreak that stretched to 11-9 in Eala's favor. Instead of slowing down, she elevated her level even further in the second set, cruising to a commanding 6-2 victory in what ESPN described as a fearless performance. When the final point was played, one of the greatest grass-court players in the world had been eliminated by a fearless 21-year-old who had started the tournament outside the top 30. That victory made what happened at Malacañang Palace almost unavoidable. It was not simply the fact that she produced a stunning upset. It was the manner in which she achieved it. There is no luck involved in surviving a grueling 90-minute opening set or dominating the second set against a reigning Wimbledon champion. Those moments reflected preparation, confidence, and extraordinary talent. They announced to the tennis world that Alex Eala had truly arrived. She followed that historic victory with another impressive win before eventually meeting Jasmine Paolini in the round of 16. Paolini, the Italian star who reached both the French Open and Wimbledon finals in 2024, proved to be an extremely difficult opponent. According to the official WTA and Olympicscom records, Paolini won the match 6-4, 4-6, 6-3. Alex fought back brilliantly to capture the second set, but was unable to finish the comeback in the deciding third set. Yet this is exactly where the story takes an unexpected turn, because only days later, the president of the Philippines welcomed her to Malacañang Palace despite the defeat. Think about what that means. The recognition was never dependent on winning the Wimbledon title. The government did not honor her because she became champion. It honored her because she reached a level no Filipino had ever reached before and represented the country with remarkable dignity throughout the entire tournament. Even in defeat, she displayed a composure that left an impression almost as powerful as her victories. President Marcos emphasized that point during his remarks, telling Alex Eala, "You have brought such pride to the Philippines and to the Filipino people, not only because of your success, but because of the grace with which you carried yourself throughout that success." Those words were about much more than winning matches. They were equally about how she handled disappointment. The Presidential Citation recognized her entire Wimbledon journey, including the way it ended. The atmosphere inside the ceremonial hall reinforced just how meaningful the occasion had become. According to the Philippine Daily Inquirer, Alex Eala entered the hall accompanied by her mother, Rosemary Maniego Eala, her father, Michael Eala, and her agent, Catalino. They were welcomed by Philippine Sports Commission Chairman Patrick Gregorio, while First Lady Liza Aranta Marcos stood beside the president throughout the ceremony. Then came one of the evening's most memorable moments. President Marcos stepped away from formal protocol and openly admitted, "I'm a fan, so I'm gushing. I'm sorry. I'm a real fan of yours." Later, smiling toward the cameras, he added, "We don't actually have a protocol for any of this. We just made it up so we'd have an excuse to take a picture with you." Those are not the carefully scripted words people usually hear during a state ceremony. They revealed something much deeper. The Philippines was creating a new tradition because there had never been a Filipina tennis player who had reached this extraordinary level before. The rulebook simply did not contain a chapter for someone like Alex Eala, so the nation wrote one in real time. There had never been a Filipina tennis player who reached this level of international success, so there was no established protocol, no blueprint, and no official tradition to follow. The Philippine government was creating one in real time before a nationwide audience because Alex Eala had accomplished something that had never been done before. Then came the exchange that turned an already historic ceremony into an unforgettable moment. President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. presented Alex Eala with the Presidential Citation, and in return, she handed him 2 personally signed baseball caps and 2 signed tennis balls. Both walked away carrying something tangible. That was far more than a symbolic gesture. It perfectly captured what had just taken place. Inside the ceremonial hall of Malacañang Palace, the leader of a nation of more than 110 million people became a fan asking for an autograph, while a 21-year-old athlete became someone whose signature the country's highest official wanted to treasure. For a brief but remarkable moment, the relationship shifted completely, and everyone in the room understood the significance. The photographs from that exchange quickly spread across Philippine media and may ultimately become one of the defining images of Filipino sports this decade. They captured the precise instant when the government stopped simply honoring an athlete and instead acknowledged that it was witnessing history unfold before its own eyes. If anyone outside the Philippines needed proof that Alex Eala's rise is recognized around the tennis world, they only had to listen to former world number 1 and 2018 Australian Open champion Caroline Wozniacki. Speaking with Tennis 365 during Wimbledon, Wozniacki offered an honest evaluation of Eala's game after watching her compete throughout the tournament. She praised Alex's complete all-around skill set, describing her as an outstanding baseline player with excellent court awareness. She noted that being left-handed gives Eala a unique advantage, especially with her sliced serve, although she also pointed out that improving her serve remains the biggest area for future development. More importantly, Wozniacki highlighted Alex's exceptional tennis intelligence and competitive attitude before concluding that the tennis world would be seeing her compete at the highest level for many years to come. That final observation carried tremendous weight. It came from a player who spent 71 weeks as world number 1, won a Grand Slam title, and has spent years analyzing the professional tour. Wozniacki was not offering empty praise or polite encouragement. She was giving a professional assessment based on experience, and her conclusion closely matched the message delivered during the Presidential Citation ceremony. Both recognized that Alex Eala is no longer viewed as a promising young player. She is already regarded as one of the sport's emerging stars. The true significance of the citation becomes even clearer when viewed from a broader perspective. The Philippines is home to more than 110 million people, while millions more Filipinos live and work across North America, Europe, the Middle East, and Asia. For generations, the nation's sporting identity has largely revolved around boxing and basketball because those were the sports in which Filipinos consistently achieved international success. Tennis was rarely part of that conversation. Before this remarkable Wimbledon run, the country's best Grand Slam singles performance had been Alex Eala's own third-round appearance at the 2025 US Open. In just one Wimbledon campaign, she doubled that achievement and established an entirely new benchmark for Philippine tennis. By doing so, she entered an extraordinarily exclusive group of Filipino athletes whose accomplishments transcend sports and become part of the nation's identity. Manny Pacquiao belongs to that group. Olympic gold medalist Hidilyn Diaz belongs to that group. Following Monday night's ceremony, Alex Eala unquestionably belongs there as well. The presidential citation was not what elevated her into that company. Instead, it served as the official acknowledgement that she had already earned her place. Across Filipino social media, the reaction reflected exactly that sentiment. Fans did not celebrate because they believed the government had elevated Alex Eala to a new level. They celebrated because they felt the government had formally recognized what the entire country already believed. The ceremony was seen less as a beginning and more as official confirmation of a historic achievement. Perhaps the most emotional part of the story occurred long before the ceremony itself. Just 1 week earlier, Alex Eala walked off center court after losing to Jasmine Paolini in the round of 16 by a score of 6-4, 4-6, 6-3. She had fought her way back to win the second set, but could not complete the comeback in the deciding set. Television cameras lingered long enough to capture the emotions of a 21-year-old whose unforgettable Wimbledon journey had finally come to an end. Rather than inventing words she never publicly said, the footage itself tells the story. She accepted defeat with remarkable composure and dignity, displaying the same grace that President Marcos later praised during the ceremony. When Alex returned home, she was welcomed at Ninoy Aquino International Airport by enthusiastic supporters who gathered simply to thank her. They were not celebrating a championship trophy. They were celebrating the history she had already created. The following day, President Marcos placed the Presidential Citation in her hands, reinforcing the idea that an athlete's value is not measured solely by the final score of one match, but by the inspiration, pride, and hope that athlete brings to an entire nation. That is the lasting meaning of the Presidential Citation. It is not the highest point of Alex Eala's career because her journey is only beginning. At just 21 years old, ranked world number 28, with the Washington, D.C. Open and the U.S. Open Series still ahead, her greatest accomplishments may still be in the future. The document presented by the president was never intended to mark the end of her story. Instead, it declared that Alex Eala has become a permanent part of the story the Philippines tells about itself. Whether she eventually climbs into the top 10, wins a Grand Slam title, or experiences future setbacks along the way, that recognition will remain unchanged. The citation transformed her achievements from individual success into a lasting piece of the nation's history. By leaving Malacañang Palace with that official recognition, she carried home more than a certificate. She carried the acknowledgement that her Wimbledon run had already changed Philippine sports forever. She is no longer simply a talented tennis player representing the Philippines. She has become a symbol of what Filipino determination, resilience, and excellence can achieve on the world stage. The two signed baseball caps and the tennis balls she left with the president now represent far more than souvenirs. They stand as reminders of the extraordinary moment when one of the country's greatest athletes exchanged gifts with its highest elected leader as equals in a historic celebration. Somewhere tonight, whether in Cebu, Cavite, California, Dubai, or anywhere else in the world where Filipinos call home, a young girl may be watching that ceremony on her phone. She sees the president proudly praising a 21-year-old Filipina who accomplished what no one before her had achieved. She sees history being celebrated, barriers being broken, and possibilities becoming real. Quietly, she begins imagining that one day she might stand in that very same room. That is Alex Eala's greatest legacy today. She represents far more than victories, rankings, or trophies. She represents opportunity. She represents possibility. She represents an open door. And as of that unforgettable evening inside Malacañang Palace, that door was officially opened for every young Filipino who dares to dream.